So, this is going to be the first in probably a long series of videos. I'm using this time, your valued precious time, to relay onto you my ideas, kind of. I've always felt like I have really good ideas for things, but I don't really have the money slash resources slash lack of laziness and stick-to-itiveness to put any of these things into action. I'm going to tell you my top 10, my top 5 ideas that I think should be made into board games. Before I start these, I would like to specify that 2 of these are pretty much new versions of Risk because I love Risk and I want that to be a thing. One of these is a video game that's I want to be made into a board game, and the last one is just a re-releasing of old board game that is just really hard to get, and I think that if they re-released it, they could do some pretty cool stuff with it. So all the housekeeping stuff is out of the way. I've introduced what I'm doing, told you, blah, 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 done. Here we go. Number 5, ranked in order of how good I think the idea is. Number 5, re-release the board game Blood Bowl. For those of you who don't know, Blood Bowl was a game based off the strategy miniatures game called Warhammer. The fantasy version, not Warhammer 40,000 or 40K. Blood Bowl was essentially a fantasy version of football, where you would have teams of orcs playing teams of elves, and you'd have teams of Skaven rat people being bashed down by teams of ogres. And it actually was a pretty fun game. There were a bunch of just miniatures that you would have to paint and customize yourself. What really stuck out about the game was that it was inexplicably fun. It was just a way for nerdy people to really enjoy a sport that kind of seemed sort of taboo and off limits for them. And another fun part of Blood Bowl is you can actually injure and kill other players in the game. You can also, if you're the goblins, cheat, like use chainsaws, throw bombs at people. You can use like witchcraft and wizardry from Hogwarts. I realize that's the exact line that comes after Hogwarts. Blood Bowl should be re-released. The game is kind of really hard to find now, and I understand that even if they re-release it, it will be super expensive, but I feel that they could re-release it and still make a good chunk of change off it. Number 4, the video game that I believe should be made into a board game is Crusader Kings. Now, I love Paradox Studios. I love the Crusader Kings franchise. They're amazing. The Crusader Kings 2 is one of the most fun games that you can play, and it has like one of the biggest modding communities because you can add like anything to it. And it also has one of the most, in my opinion, greatest replayabilities, because every time that you choose a different person or family line to play as, it's an entirely different game, almost. I feel that Crusader Kings 2 could be, well, just Crusader Kings could be made, and I feel like it would have to be a lot smaller, just because board games usually are. I think that they could do it in a way where like half the players are Muslim nations, 3 are sultanates, and the other half of the players, I'm just guessing that there's going to be 6, just because the other half are Catholic nations, and they just face off for the entirety of the game. Like a more rigid alliance system. But yeah, number 3, I really like this concept, so here it is. Fantasy football. Now, I don't mean this in the sense of, wow, that's really great. You get to choose football players and put them on your team. That's great. You know, I have an app for that on my phone. Not that hard. Shut up. That's not what I mean. What I mean is fantasy football. Fantasy in the literal sense of fantasy. If you really wanted to be super literal, you could just call it fiction football. Sort of like Blood Bowl in that it's a fantasy sense, but I want it to be much, much broader. You have to play for your players and everything, and almost all of it's team management. You could actually play the games out if you wanted to, but that would really depend on the people who are making the game. I want to see me formatting an entire offense based off of having my 2 wide receivers being the Hound and the Mountain That Rides. from Game of Thrones. Both of them are so massive they can just plow over anyone in their way. My running back, of course, would be The Flash. My QB, I would have to say, would be Luke Skywalker. He can use the Force. He would never miss a pass. Isn't that amazing? I mean, of course, spending all of that, I would have to really sacrifice on my defensive line. I may be only able to afford a simple cave troll from Lord of the Rings. Or, if I really wanted to, I could get the ultimate defensive lineman that doesn't let anyone score. Gandalf the Grey. You shall not pass! I'm so lame. But do you understand the concept? Having football teams made up of characters from almost every genre of science fiction, fantasy, not just regular fiction, fantasy. I feel like it's a really good idea, and it doesn't have to stop at just name brand characters. You could have an entire team of just stormtroopers. Granted, your team's going to be ridiculously crappy. They'll never make any of their passes, and if they try to shoot anyone, it probably wouldn't work. But you also have the option of just having an entire team of Spartans from 300 led by the ultimate Spartan, Master Chief! But but the concept I really, really like because it's simple and it's a little bit of a play on words, which I love just because I'm a nerd. Now, idea number 2. This is one of the 2 Risk games that I would like to add expansions to, just because Risk is so awesome and they use it for almost every platform and almost every genre and almost every franchise that just asks. I just feel like, why not make these? Number 2, Game of Thrones Risk. There is a Game of Thrones board game, which I really think is good, and it's an alright board game, and it wonderfully incorporates the intrigue. But a lot of people just don't like the intrigue of Game of Thrones and just want to see everyone murder each other. I feel like they should do that. Sponsor! Now my number 1 idea. I like this one a lot, and I'm really excited about it. Number 1 idea is Lego Risk. Lego Risk! Just, it's so cool, because just imagine, if you will, you have a map. Just a really thin base plate with all of the little bumpities. For those of you who play, you know what I'm talking about. Those little bumpities, and you just have a bunch of little single figurines that only take up 1 bump, and you just move them around in armies, and you attack people. 'Cause Risk. And for the different armies, you can go with any of the different Lego sets that they've made. I'm not saying like, oh yeah, let's totally do DC Lego. If DC wants to do that and gives them the rights, that's fine. But I think that the big shots at Lego should get together with the big shots from Hasbro and work out a friggin' Risk game. Risk with Legos would be awesome. Even if they can't get the actual big brand name franchises that Lego has, like Star Wars, DC, Marvel Universe, they could really do a Risk game with their own franchises. They could have the police Legos fighting against the castle Legos and the pirate Legos, and also, yeah, the Space Martian Rescue Team Legos. It's just little stuff like that that I think would be ridiculously cool. If you wanted to, you could really just, they get to make their own map, and if you were so persuaded, you could just use that Risk map for like anything. I really think that could be a cool idea. So, those are my top 5 concepts for board games that I think they should make. I think that they should make those games. So, get on that, powers that be. Hey, you Hasbro, and you Lego, and everyone who owns Game of Thrones and stuff. Do it! Now! Thanks. See you later. Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. That's just my thought on what they should do and what they should make. Just the general thing. If you like it, watch another video. If you don't, go away.